A New York judge is delaying a key ruling on Donald Trump's conviction in his hush money trial weeks before he is set to be sentenced. Judge Juan Merchan is expected to deliver a ruling today, or was expected rather, to deliver a ruling today on whether to uphold Trump's conviction. Trump's team has been calling for the case to be dismissed, and now the prosecution is being given another week to weigh their position after Trump's election win. Trump was set to be sentenced on November the 26th. Well, let's bring in Tim Heaphy, former federal prosecutor and former lead investigator of the January 6th committee. Tim, thanks so much for your time. So this is unprecedented. I feel like we use that word all the time these days, but it really is unprecedented when it comes to a president. Can you just remind us exactly of what Trump was found guilty of?
Sure, Ella. So he was found guilty of essentially altering documents to cover up the payment of hush money to Stormy Daniels, a porn star, to essentially cover up a payment that he made to silence her prior to the election. It's crime in New York State to have documents falsified in order to mask any sort of misconduct. And that's what he was found guilty in a New York jury back when that trial was held earlier this year.
So Judge Merchan was set to make a number of critical rulings this month, including Trump's sentencing. What does this delay mean for the sentencing timeline?
So both sides asked for the delay, both the district attorney in Manhattan and former President Trump's lawyers. They want to evaluate the effect of the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. Trump's lawyers say essentially the Supreme Court said you can't use any evidence about anything that occurred while the president was in office to prove a criminal case. And there was some testimony in the New York case about some things that straddled into the time that President Trump was president. The government says that that's all private conduct and therefore not precluded by the Supreme Court ruling. So that's one of the issues. And then the second is the fact that he's been reelected and he will soon again be the president of the United States, how a possible sentence would impact his ability to conduct the official duties of the office. That is another, as you said, unprecedented event that the judge wants to hear from the parties as to how he should factor that in. This isn't just a regular criminal case where a sentencing would go forward. It likely delays that for some long period of time.
Regardless of the judge's decision here, what sort of precedent would be set and what sort of impact, I suppose, does it have on the public's faith in the justice system, particularly if the guilty verdict is thrown out?
Yeah, I mean, look, in this country, as in Canada, it's the people that make these decisions. And if the people's decision is disregarded because of politics, I think it deepens skepticism in the system. The fact that you can potentially get away with the kind of crime that the people have found him guilty of and not have a legal consequence might strike a lot of Americans as unfair. A lot of Americans never believed that the prosecution was just anyway, thought it was politically motivated. That was certainly the former president's position throughout the trial. So it'll just increase polarization in this country about the efficacy of the criminal justice system.
In theory, if Trump does get sentenced, and we know he's been found guilty, if he does get sentenced and we know he will be in office within months, could he pardon himself?
Not in a case at the state level. He could pardon himself in a federal case, but this is a case that was brought by the New York district attorney in the state courts of New York, and the federal government has no power to undo anything that occurred in a New York state court.
All right. Thanks for your time. We have to leave it there. Thanks for your time today, Tim. Tim Heaphy is a former federal prosecutor and former lead investigator on the January 6th committee.